Chevy has just unveiled the Corvette E-Ray. I think this design looks so much better than the Stingray. I wasn't a huge fan of the Stingray, reason being I made a couple of videos on that. The front end I think sits too high visually because of the intakes. The rear end has this interesting inverted section on the top part of the deck lid, and the side view intake looked like an aftermarket piece. But all of those features have been fixed here in the E-Ray design. We're gonna have a look at the front, side, and rear, and also check out the interior for the new E-Ray. And I'm gonna let you know what those changes are and how big of a difference those changes actually make to the design. So some of the spec and tech here for the new E-Ray. It has a 160 horsepower electric motor, which is mounted on top of the front axle, giving it an additional boost in addition to the 495 horsepower mid-engine 6.2 liter V8. And combined, this gives you 655 horses, and 0 to 60 is done in 2.5 seconds, quarter mile time of 10.5 seconds, which actually is the same time as the Z06. You can drive this in pure electric mode, but this is not an electric car. That's not what this was built for. So you can only do electric mode, which Chevy calls stealth mode, for 5 miles tops, and it only works up to 45 miles per hour. So I guess it's a good thing if you wake up early, you don't want to wake up the neighborhood, you put it in stealth mode and kind of cruise slowly out of the neighborhood, or you can just fire it up and rip it with a V8 and wake everybody else. It's your choice. The cost for the new E-Ray is about $40,000 more than the Stingray, but I think that's worth it just in the design changes that they made here. That also makes the Stingray a pretty good deal when you think about it. So the starting price for the E-Ray here with the coupe Targa roof is $104,295, and if you want the convertible, you have to add $7,000 on top of that. It's still $5,000 less than the Z06, which has pretty much the same performance, and the E-Ray will go on sale later this year. So let's jump into Photoshop here and let's have a look at what's going on with this E-Ray and these design changes that I'm talking about. So I'm really glad that Chevy decided to go with the wide fenders that you have in the Z06, because it looks so much better than the standard Stingray. You can see this line here specifically that goes into the front bumper now has a connection here. I'm still not really a fan of this corner, how it goes in like this tiny little corner. I kind of want to have this piece go into the top part and remove this part so we don't have that little indent in the front end bumper. But it does make sense. It makes a lot more sense when we look at the side view why that is actually there. So comparing these two, what I think Chevy did a fantastic job upgrading this front end is the lower part. So the Stingray looks like it sits a little too high. I think these intakes are a little too big for a mid-engine car. So what they did is they changed the wings. In this case, in the Stingray, the wing goes inwards like this, and in the E-Ray and the Z06, they go outwards in this angle, which I think looks a lot better. And in addition, they added some body pieces onto this, or sensors, or whatever this is, to cover up some of the black holes that we have in the Stingray right here. And you also have a cut into this section, which we do have here as well, but here it is body colored, so it kind of reduces the weight of the front end of the E-Ray, which I think looks really good. I also love this spec. This is probably the spec I would go with. I love this silver in combination with these blue stripes that we have on the hood. Very nicely done, and a very nice upgrade from Chevy on the Corvette. But the magic all happens in the side view, because have a look at this. We now have a completely new integration of the side intake. It's not completely new, it was in the Z06 as well, but this works so much better than the Stingray's intake here. This looks like it's not thought through how this is going to be integrated in the body. It has zero connection in this corner to anything going on in the bodywork here, and it doesn't have any connection here either. And then it just is a big black piece that sits randomly in the side of the car. And what they did here is they tried to figure out how to integrate this better. So we have this big wide fenders from the Z06 on the E-Ray up here, and we have a completely new intake that now goes upwards like this in this angle instead of having it go downwards. And that simple change makes a big difference in this design as well. And I also like that in the E-Ray, this piece, the whole entire piece of the side intake is in the same color as the rest of the car, which looks better and also looks more integrated and doesn't make it stick out too much. And these are the wheels that they should have put on the Stingray to begin with. These are just beautiful looking wheels. I'm not a fan of these wheels that came with the 2020 Stingray. None of them really looked great and it didn't plant the car, but this is completely different in this stance, and it also obviously helps to have these wide fenders from the Z06 onto the E-Ray. So this is the line that I'm talking about in the front end. Why this area is going to make more sense in side view is because we have the wide body kit here. The line from the wide fenders are now going in to this line, and that's why we have this cut corner here, because this line needs to connect to the front bumper somehow. So I think for that reason I would probably not change it. It makes sense, it has a purpose for being there, and in side view it doesn't bother me as much as looking at it from a front view. Now let's have a look at the rear view before jumping into the interior, and then I'm gonna show you the money shot of this new E-Ray. One photo that just kudos to the photographer for taking that photo. Gonna show you that after we look at the interior. So looking at this car, the 2020 Stingray, it has this dip here, this inverted line that kind of dips downwards instead of dipping upwards, so that we have some sort of integrated spoiler in this design. You also have this intakes which look a little static. They look almost like just a base square. Doesn't have any dynamic movement stretching it out to either side. This rear diffuser looks pretty good. I mean, it does have a lot of plastic on it, stretching pretty far up onto the rear end. And we still have, I think this is the same diffuser in the E-Ray, but we do have an intake here that doesn't exist on the Stingray. I think that has to do with the wide body. But the big changes here are that now we have this wing that reduces this downward line or curvature and kind of builds up the rear end to have this integrated spoiler in the design, which I think looks so much better. And in addition, have a look at these. The air outlets in the rear end now has a more dynamic feeling to them because they're stretched out in a horizontal direction. Both of these, they're narrower and feel a lot more sporty, and it really helps with making it look wider, in addition, of course, to the wide body kit that we have on the E-Ray and the Z06. One thing I would change is probably have these grills or texture here in black instead of having them in body colored. It looks a little unfinished when it's in the same color as the rest of the car. So these are just a detail that I would want to have black. All right, so look at the interior here. No, not a big change between the 2020 Stingray and the E-Ray. I like this interior. I love how everything is focused on the driver. There's nothing going on for the passenger. They're just along for the ride. They can have a look at some vents right here, but everything else is just focused and angled towards the driver. And we still have a nice cozy house for the gauge cluster. I don't mind that it's digital. I think that's great. And we also have this big bar with all the functions and settings for the car, in addition to the steering wheel buttons right here. And the same goes for the normal Stingray here. It has the exact same interior, probably lacks a couple of buttons for the engagement of the electric motor and so on, but the steering wheel has a really cool shape. It's almost like a rectangular shape onto this, which I think looks pretty cool and unique. Now let's have a look at the one photo that really blew my mind when I saw it, and that is this photo right here. Just look at how planted this car looks. This is an angle that we rarely see of cars, but I think this just is the money shot for this car. It looks super planted. I love these wheels sticking out, 5-spoke wheels. I love when you see the spokes like this from a side view and just in line with the bodywork. It just looks so good. And then we have this sharp shoulder line in the rear end, and we also have a sharp fender in the front end, and we have these lines as well in the bodywork, creating some more dynamic feeling onto this car. Here you can see what I'm talking about. I want to have this be in a black color instead of having it in the same color as the rest of the body. So overall, I think this is a fantastic upgrade from the normal Stingray in designs. It's just a couple of small changes to this design, but it looks a lot better. Let me know what you think about the new E-Ray. Are you a fan of these new changes that we have on the Z06 as well, or do you prefer the original Stingray? Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.